Hi dear ones, my name is Sarah Lustig and I am a spiritual healer and coach and a licensed therapist and art therapist. I specialize in helping sensitive, empathic, deeply feeling women heal their childhood trauma and change their childhood conditioning and limiting beliefs that are generational, that have been passed down from parents, and helping them heal from the experiences that they had growing up that were painful and traumatic to them. And so today on this live, I'm going to talk about the hidden cost of not healing our childhood wounds, the hidden cost of not healing our childhood conditioning, and how this impacts us if we, don't take this leap towards wholeness, towards integration with ourselves. So I want to start by just acknowledging that life is incredibly beautiful. It is meant to be beautiful. It is meant to be rich and full of meaning. We are meant to connect deeply to life. You being a deep feeling, sensitive woman, you are actually ahead of most people. Most people are very disconnected from their feelings, whereas you are very connected. However, that connection is often overwhelming. And that's part of what keeps you stuck in these cycles of conditioning and these patterns of behaviors that you don't ultimately resonate with and that don't ultimately belong to you. Understanding that each day we have an opportunity to experience the fullness of life, the good, the bad, the gray, all in between the black and the white. That as a deeply feeling, sensitive woman, you do in fact experience more of life than the average person does. And while that is a tremendous thing in many ways, you get a more full experience of life because of that. It also often means that you are overwhelmed and anxious frequently. And that's really challenging, to be overwhelmed in this society every single day with so much collective trauma that's going on and taking place, and really absorbing that every single day so that you don't feel so empowered and connected to yourself anymore. This means, being so attuned to other people that you are disconnected from yourself. You're afraid of them judging you. You are afraid of being emotionally wounded by them, afraid of being, misunderstood by people, afraid of hurting people. And this can lead to a lot of fear if not managed. This fear can overtake your life and can cause you to be stuck and just recreating cycles that are wounded, that are based in wounds, and that create more wounds for you. That your fear of being disliked by other people, your fear of being rejected by people, your fear of them abandoning you or leaving you, or you not being good enough for them, these are all fears that are keeping you stuck from living a happy and meaningful life, from being able to really experience the fullness of life in a way that's empowering to you and not draining to you, and not in a way that leaves you empty or more burnt out, which you're typically feeling right now. This fear keeps you trapped and stuck. It's kind of like Voldemort from Harry Potter, that he is living a half-life. He is not truly connected to himself. He is not truly alive because he is separate, right? His soul has been fragmented in these other things. And that's what happens when somebody experiences childhood wounds and childhood trauma, especially if you are a deeply feeling, sensitive woman. If you are a highly attuned child to your environment, then chances are you have experienced more trauma as a result of that, more emotional trauma, relational trauma, more codependency and people pleasing in your behaviors as a result of trying to keep yourself safe growing up. And so you learned how to, live this kind of half-life because your soul got fragmented in those experiences. This is known as dissociation, with our human lens, where the body isn't safe because of what's taking place. So we disconnect from the body and we leave the body in order to still feel safe as a self, as a heart, as a soul. So understanding how these cycles get created of disconnecting from yourself and over attuning to the environment or to other people in your environment in order to try to create safety, and how this keeps you stuck from actually being present in those moments and actually being able to enjoy people's company and really connect with them meaningfully. It means that you're not fully alive to the joy in the moment, to the abundance of each moment, to the beauty of each moment. It means you're not ultimately connected to yourself and source, which means that you're not going to be living a fulfilling life. You're going to be living a life based on other people's perceptions of you and trying to please them and trying to fulfill what you think other people want from you. Understanding that fear is not bad. Fear is normal. It's a normal part of life. It's a normal part of our experiences. However, it cannot be trusted to make our decisions from. So we want to be aware of our fears, but we don't want to let them be in the driver's seat of our life. We don't want to let them have control of what is taking place in our mind, in our heart, in our behaviors. When we don't address our fears, we will unconsciously act from them. We will be on an autopilot place in which our fears are the ones leading the way. Fear gets triggered because it is our brain over-identifying, this highly active nervous system over-identifying with threats, perceived threats in the environment. And so being able to understand what triggers your brain to perceive threats, how your brain understands and processes threats, and then being able to shift the power back to you so that you can soothe and manage those fears when they show up. You can soothe your triggers. You know how to show up for yourself when there's anxiety that's present. When you don't address your fears, they will unconsciously rule your life, which costs you meaningful relationships, costs you meaningful connection with people, costs you time, costs you money and energy that you're spent overcompensating and trying to prove yourself to other people, trying to be good enough for other people instead of realizing your own innate gifts and how to utilize them, trusting them, and creating a better life for yourself, creating better relationships from a place of fullness, from a place of knowing your worth, knowing that all parts of you have a right to exist and how to use all of your different parts in the moments that you need them for the different situations that are showing up for you in life. Understanding that when you are acting from your autopilot and your fears and you're letting your triggers rule your life, you are ultimately creating more wounds for yourself. You're creating more disrupted energy in your life that you're then having to try to manage. It's an exhausting cycle. You're also then creating more wounds for the people around you because you're, you have high expectations for them that aren't fair, that you haven't communicated, because that's what you would do for them. And so you're holding them to your own expectations of yourself. And then you're beating yourself up and resenting yourself or them for not being able to meet your expectations. And so this becomes a very vicious cycle. And you're doing this not only of them, but of yourself as well. It's exhausting. So understanding that you are creating more internal suffering this way when you try to conform to other people's versions of you. Understanding that other people's versions of you are not accurate. You get to determine what version of you want to live your life through and what version of you lead through at any given moment. And doing this from a present place, from what each moment calls on from you in any given moment. Being able to be present with all parts of you. That when you have conformed to this relationship with other people, which means that you've normalized a relationship to chaos. When we've experienced trauma and wounds persistently throughout life, we have normalized a relationship to chaos, to chaotic relationships, to chaotic expressions of love, to dynamics of come close, now go away. I want you, I need you, I don't need anybody, and this kind of push-pull in your relationships because you had confusing early developmental relationships in the household that you grew up with, in the dysfunction that you had growing up as you developed. So being caught up in this emotional turmoil without even realizing that you're experiencing emotional trauma, not even realizing the degree in which these things are impacting your life and keeping you from joy, from happiness. Getting caught up in what everybody else wants and what everybody else needs and what everybody else thinks, instead of being able to prioritize yourself and what you want and what you need in your life. You've been doing this for so long. It's got to be exhausting. I know that it is, because I was you. I was that person. I was that woman for so long. I was that girl for so long, until I grew up and I emotionally matured and I became capable of holding all of my emotions and understanding there's nothing wrong with my emotions. There's nothing wrong with expressing those emotions and being able to be present with the full expression of who I am. Now, that also means not expecting other people to be okay with my emotions. That doesn't mean putting those emotions on other people, although we have a right to healthy connection with other people. It's about balance. And so knowing that it doesn't have to be this way of over-identifying with other people and trying to make them happy and to please them, that we can form a relationship with ourselves and our emotions, our mental state, our thoughts, our body, so that we can have a more fulfilling life, so that you can create a different experience for yourself. It might be right now that you are afraid to stay the same, but you're also afraid to change. And being in this in-between place where no matter which direction you go, it's going to be uncomfortable. And knowing that you might be afraid of how other people perceive you, or how they're going to perceive this change, and how they're going to feel about the changes they are making, how they're going to feel about you becoming a different person or being a different version of you more than you have been in the past. Being afraid yourself of who you might become or who you are becoming, and how that feels and how overwhelming it might feel at times to actually step into the fullness of your power, taking full ownership and full responsibility for your life. It's not easy to do that. It's a lot easier to look to other people, to blame other people for when things go wrong in our life and say, well, they told me to go this direction and it didn't work out, so it's ultimately their fault. And being able to take full ownership of our life is not doing that anymore. It means that we have to look to ourselves when things don't work out. And not in a way of blaming ourselves or making ourselves wrong for having that experience, but being able to actually open ourselves up to the wisdom of that experience. And, well, how did that help us? And what did we learn from that experience? And how can we use the wisdom of that experience to make a more conscious and present decision for the next time from a more full place? Recognizing that each day we're getting more and more intelligent. We're gaining more and more wisdom that we can use from our previous experience in life and apply to what might be unfolding now. So just understanding this recognition of fear and how this ultimately costs you so much and keeps you trapped, how you might be afraid of facing yourself, how you might, be seeing all that you need to face, and acknowledging all of that feels a bit overwhelming. You might feel a bit daunting, that you're afraid to choose yourself. You're afraid to forge a new path. Your family has always done things one way. It's always been a certain way. And here you are now trying to do things differently. And there might be some part of that that feels really exciting and empowering at times. And then there's going to be other times where that does feel really overwhelming. And you're going to have self-doubt of, can I really do this? Am I really good enough or strong enough to be able to do this? And the answer is absolutely yes. Can you do it alone? No. You need support. You need guidance. You need love. You need community. You need to have reflection of who you truly are and not who you have been seeing yourself from through the lens of your trauma, through the lens of your childhood wounds and experiences, through your limiting beliefs. These fears were ultimately created by the conditioning that you experienced in your childhood. As you grew up, as your brain developed, as it created stories about the world, as it learned what was good and safe and comfortable in the world from a very childlike developmental perspective of those things. This conditioning is rooted in the past, and yet it's still playing out today. And so getting to the root of this conditioning is crucial. Understanding the root of how and why these thoughts and beliefs were formed and how they are now showing up in your life now to create these patterns that ultimately keep you trapped in repeating cycles and behaviors that you don't identify with, and creating more fear that keeps you living too small, that keeps you going after the things that you really desire in your life and you are really worthy of. These beliefs are generational. They get passed down from our parents, from our grandparents. In your DNA is 7 generations worth of information stored about the world, about their experiences, about their own fears that became biologically ingrained that you now act from that reptilian lower part of our brain, that more biological part of our brain, as opposed to our emotional part of our brain, our intellectual. And then together we're operating from a full part of that left and right hemisphere when all of our pieces and parts are working cohesively together in the conscious present moment. Getting back to that place always where we are in the conscious present moment. Just taking a moment to come back to that now. If you've been listening to this, then you might have all these thoughts kind of swirling around and being like, oh my gosh, I identify with this. It's like she's talking to me, right? Recognizing it's okay. It is okay. If you recognize these behaviors, these experiences in yourself, we have been living in a very codependent society as a whole, in a very wounded and traumatized society. So these are going to be patterns naturally that show up in you. These are generational. So not to make yourself wrong if you identify with these things. Understanding though, however, it is so important to not just recognize these behaviors and beliefs in your life, but also understanding how they are showing up and what they are costing you. Recognizing that when you stay stuck and disconnected from your emotions, you also get disconnected from joy. It also costs you freedom, time freedom, emotional freedom, fulfilling relationships, authentic connection with people, abundance, meaningful and passionate work, being able to really do like your soul's, like what lights your soul up in the world, to be able to bring that forth, whatever that may be, whatever kind of work that may be. It will keep you staying stuck in jobs that you don't enjoy, that don't make you feel passionate, that you don't feel connected to, that you don't feel inspired by. Working for bosses that drain your energy and don't respect you and honor you, that don't appreciate you. Giving your power away to those situations, to those environments, putting people on a pedestal, thinking that they know better than you, thinking that they have the answers when they don't, when those answers are within you. It's just a matter of unlocking those answers. That you will continue to feel powerless if you are creating and recreating these patterns in your relationships, in your work environment, in your friendships. The cost of staying the same is pretty high. It's pretty significant. Life is short. Life is meant to be lived. It's meant to be experienced with joy, no matter what is taking place in our life. And when we stay the same, we're losing so much just to create a false sense of safety, because that's all it does. It creates a false sense of safety, and it doesn't actually allow us to really embody the fullness of who we are. There is also a cost to changing. We want to be aware of that. We want to be conscious of that. Changing does cost us things. It costs us different parts of ourselves, how we used to view ourselves. It costs us different relationships, means moving on from different jobs. So there are things that change when we change. That's a natural part of life. And so just recognizing that it's okay to grieve during this process. And that's part of why doing it with somebody is so meaningful, because then you're really held in that grieving process and it's not so scary to have to do it all by yourself. That without changing, you get further away from yourself ultimately. You get closer to this distorted view of yourself that is aligned or conformed rather with how other people view you or other people's expectations of you in the world. And you become further disconnected from your true self, from your true essence. So, you become further disconnected from yourself and source. Not able to have a meaningful connection with the divine. Not able to understand the wisdom of the experiences that are showing up in your life and what they might be calling you to. What changes they might be asking of you. Recognizing that if you don't change, if you don't, make these investments in yourself, then it costs you the connection to self. Whereas when you do make the changes, it actually gives you the keys to yourself. It allows you then to unlock the door. You still have to walk through it, but it allows you to unlock it. It allows you to return to yourself, to the power that exists there, that's waiting there for you. What we need in order to change our life, ultimately, is rather simple and very complicated at the same time. What it takes is changing our thoughts. We actually do create our life based on our thoughts. If we have a thought of, I'm so stupid, I am not worthy of that, then we are not going to go after a promotion at work. And we're going to continue to accept less than that. And that's going to trickle down into other areas of our life. And our behaviors and actions are going to match the thought. It is all about the thought. It's the root of everything. There are reasons why we have certain thoughts. It's not always about us that we have those thoughts. And it's really important to distinguish that and to start to recognize that and learn how to know the difference, how to discern between what is your thought, a true thought connected to your truth, to source, to your soul's wisdom, versus another thought that you've been conditioned based on external experiences, based on people's feedback, based on people's criticisms and judgments of you over time that you accepted to be true about yourself. And then you now act from those beliefs. When we change our thoughts, we have to change the way we think about not just ourselves, but our experiences. The way that we think about our lives, the way that we think about the people in our lives, the way that we think about everything. And that's really scary. That's what creates a lot of people staying stuck and not going after what they want, because they are afraid to change the way that they think about these things. Because to think new thoughts would create new experiences, which is very scary for that lower part of the brain, the egoic brain that wants to create safety and wants to keep you alive every moment of every day. We want to honor that part of your brain. We don't want to make it wrong or bad. It is helping you. It is an important part of who you are. We want to help you learn to work with that part of you and not make it bad. So the challenge is that, understanding that your thoughts create your reality can be a little scary, because it does give you a lot more control when you've been giving that control away, when you've been giving that power away to other people. And it forces you to take that control back and actually start to take responsibility for your life and showing up in your life in the way that you need, in the way that spirit is guiding you to and asking you to. And trust me, I know how difficult that is. The fact that I'm even here doing this live with you right now, that's difficult for me. My soul, there's a part of my soul that wants to hide and wants to run away and be, under my covers. It doesn't want to show up. But what Source is asking me is to show up. And so, how do we reconcile those different parts of us? How do we reconcile what our soul is ultimately capable of and asking us to do, even when there's fear showing up, and not making the fear wrong or bad, not making any part of us wrong or bad, understanding how we work with those parts. The challenge is not to numb, not to dissociate, not to disconnect from the self, from the sensations, from the fear that's showing up, but actually to move towards them, to have compassion for them, to have love for them, to not dissociate through substances or food or TV or social media, which has been the generational norm, which is very much the generational norm. You know, for our generation, it's more social media and TV and things like that. For older generations, it was substances and food, you know, to some degree a little bit more. Our generation has a more complicated relationship with food in different ways. And that's not to say that, you know, substances or food or social media, TV, like none of those things are bad. I'm not demonizing any of those things. They all have a role and they're all important in our life in different ways. It's about our intention with those things. It's about the role that they play in our life, the balance or harmony that we have with those things, or the disharmony or dis-ease they are creating in our life. And we want to just be aware of our intention with them, not demonizing any of those. You know, understanding too, often our behaviors with numbing and dissociating are generational patterns. They are behaviors that have been passed down through our parents, through their parents, through their parents, and so on and so forth. As I said, 7 generations back. This work, this inner work, this healing work is really about breaking these generational fear patterns and behaviors and how they show up in your life so that you can show up from a full place and from a present place of how you want to be responding, not from a place of autopilot and just reacting to what's going on in the moment. This work is ultimately about increasing your window of tolerance, which is the amount of kind of emotional threshold that you have in your life. It's also about increasing your capacity. So increasing our threshold is about just surviving. You know, how deep can we swim in the ocean without drowning, right? So that's kind of increasing our emotional threshold. Whereas capacity is being able to expand into much more than that, that we don't need to be swimming alone in the ocean. Maybe we can find a boat and we can actually have more resources available, which allows us to go further and not drown in the ocean, right? So it's not just about increasing our window of tolerance and our threshold. It's also about increasing our capacity, which is much more about you're thriving and you being able to thrive. It's about you moving out of survival patterns and just trying to not drown in life into shifting into being able to thrive and actually have a full, meaningful expression of yourself and your life. Learning how to ride the emotional waves in your life. Learning how to no longer shame yourself for them, no longer make them bad, make yourself bad for having intense emotions. Learning that you feeling with the depth that you do is actually special, is actually medicine that the world needs more of, that most people are so disconnected from their emotions, and you are showing them a different way. Being able to learn how to work with your emotional experience, how to increase your capacity to feel again so that you can safely feel more into joy, so that you can safely feel more into ease, into peace, into relaxation and rest, and trust that you are worthy of those, that those are an important aspect of who you are and your purpose in this life. That this is really about you being in touch with your true essence and the magic that you possess within in that essence. In the most empowered version of you who has boundaries in her life, who can speak her mind confidently, who can go after what she wants, who can believe in herself, who can be her own cheerleader, who can encourage herself and support herself and romance herself and love herself and show up for herself and be present with herself in all the ways, every moment of every day. And that's not to say that we don't have other people there to do it with us, have other people there to support us and guide us. But it's also about the knowingness that we've got our own back too. The knowingness that we're going to be just fine, no matter what the universe might throw at us, no matter what our own internal mind is creating in our life and showing up through our thoughts, which have become our behaviors and our actions. This work is ultimately about returning to the heart, returning to connection with the heart, to loving yourself, to loving your life, to seeing your life and your experiences through the lens of the heart, through having compassion for yourself through your experiences, that understanding the people in your life, how they have caused you harm, how that harm has shown up in your life, how that harm has, caused you to wound other people consciously or unconsciously. Being able to have compassion for all of those parts, all of those aspects. Understanding that everyone we meet is wounded. Everyone we meet is experiencing trauma right now. Everyone that we meet is experiencing grief. Everyone has lost something in the last couple of years. Lost friendships, lost relationships, lost jobs, lost people in their life, right? Understanding that every single person we meet is traumatized right now to a degree. And the more we can have compassion for ourselves, for them, for the collective, the more we heal ourselves, each other, and the collective. The more we have grace and patience for each other, for all of us, for what each of us is going through. The more we connect again with each other and each other's humanity, each other's innate dignity that every single person has a right to. No matter your skin color, no matter what other people say about you, you have the right to innate dignity. And it is so important that you know that and that you remember that and that you act from that place, connected to that truth. Knowing that other people's truth of you is not true. It is distorted through their wounds, through their own traumas, through their own experiences of the world, through their own fears. The more we fear ourselves, the more we will fear others. It's as simple as that. The more we hate ourselves, the more likely we are to hate others. The more likely that self-hatred is going to spill out on people around us. The inverse is also true. The more we love ourselves, the more that love spills out. The more we show up for ourselves, the more we can show up for others. The more we can show up for the world with the full expression of who we are. Authentic, being able to really, be in our voice, in our body, trusting that we are good, that we are safe, that our soul has a purpose to come, to speak these words, to share these wisdoms, to share our experiences, to share our love with one another, to connect with one another in this way. Being able to treat each person that you encounter from this lens of their trauma, from this lens of compassion, from an open-heartedness. Being able to have compassion for wherever they may be on their journey in this moment right now. And that's hard. It's hard loving people that much, to that degree, that we let them go in so many ways and we really let them be themselves. It's such a beautiful gift to love people that way. As you learn to hold yourself this way with compassion, you become unstuck from generational patterns, from behavioral patterns that are rooted in guilt and shame in your life, that are rooted in pain and trauma in your life. Letting go of these allows you to blossom into the full expression of who you are, the full authentic version of who you are. Divinely connected to yourself, divinely connected to Source. That is what you deserve. That is the kind of life that creates fulfillment within, that creates joy, that creates peace and harmony and balance. If you are a sensitive woman who is interested in taking this journey and is interested in connecting back with yourself, understanding how these conditions have kept you stuck, have kept you rooted in fear, have kept you living small, have kept you people-pleasing and trying to prove your worth to other people and prove that you are good enough, then I invite you to join this healing work, this inner work. I invite you to join my academy. It's called Golden Soul Alchemy. It is a 16-week container full of so many like juicy teachings on yourself, on who you are, on how to connect to yourself, on how to show more love for yourself. We do this through the lens of the inner child and through sacred reparenting work, and I take you on a journey from start to finish. I start with boundaries because boundaries are so important for being able to do the deep healing inner work that allows us to really transform and allows you to really show up as the empowered version of you, as the authentic version of you, as the full expression of who you are, bold and beautiful, fierce and tender and soft, sexy and strong, all of it, all of you. Understanding that no part of you is wrong, no part of you is bad. Nothing that you've experienced in life is more than your soul could handle. That might be hard for your human self to understand. That might be hard for, different parts of your brain to understand and wrap your head around. But your soul does have that wisdom and does have that knowing that everything you've experienced in your life has been an important part of your soul's journey and your soul's progress and your soul's growth and expansion. And we, through this program, we understand that. And that's the lens in which we work through, in which we look at you through this place of your fullness and through the understanding of your soul's journey and what it came here to do and how to connect more deeply, not just to yourself, but your soul's calling and your purpose in life. So if that is of interest to you, I invite you to join Golden Soul Alchemy, the 16-week container that's starting in May. Applications are now open and I invite you to join. The application link is in my bio. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Thank you all of those who joined me today. I appreciate it. And if you are catching the replay, make sure to leave me some love in the comment section below. Thank you so much. Have a gorgeous day, dear souls.